A former Las Vegas employee is now seeking a seat on the city council, and we're talking with him right here on Nevada Politics Today. I'm your host, Victor Jakes. Brian Knudsen worked for the city for 9 years before running his own consulting firm. He also has a master's degree from the University of Southern California. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, as you know, developer Johan Lowy has sued the city for $250 million over development at the Badlands golf course. What is your position on that? Should he be allowed to develop and build homes on that golf course?
The very most controversial question is my first question. Thank you.
You gotta start with the good stuff.
I appreciate the question. I know it's something that a lot of the political influencers are talking about. I can tell you, knocking on doors, that is not a single person has brought that issue up. So right now, while I'm focused on the issues of the constituents of Ward 1, I do know that this is a big issue for our community, and it's something that sets the pace for the rest of the city of Las Vegas going forward, especially as it relates to open space in our community. The issue is in the courts right now. There's not a lot the city council can do until the issue is decided at the courts, but I have enjoyed my time listening and learning as much as I possibly can. And I look forward to working with the city council and the city staff and the developers and the residents when the time comes for the city council to make a decision.
So, I mean, it was a 4-3 decision to not let him develop. Steve Soroka resigned this week, really surprisingly. You're running to replace Lois Tarkanian. Those were 2 votes against development. I mean, if you get on the council, you could be a swing vote on that project. Don't voters deserve to know at least what your thoughts are?
I think it's one issue, and voters are concerned about a variety of issues, from education to healthcare to transportation to homelessness. Those are the things that I really want to focus on, especially during this campaign. When I get to the city, I'm going to have a lot more information given to me, and I'll be able to make an informed decision then. I've been in government for a long time. These decisions aren't made overnight, and I think it's irresponsible of me to come out and say what a position would be until I have all of the information.
Okay. Another controversial position has been short-term rentals. Lois Tarkanian, the woman that you're seeking to replace, was a big opponent of those. What are your thoughts on the city's short-term rental ban?
Yeah, and I appreciate that question. That does come up at the doors. Short-term rentals is a complicated issue for the voters. For me, I'm a parent first and foremost. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I have a short-term rental right next door to me. I can tell you I don't necessarily feel safe with my children going out with new people coming in every Thursday and new people leaving every Sunday. And so I appreciate the work of our Councilwoman Lois Tarkanian with the ban, but I think a lot more can be done, and I think what needs to happen because of the technology companies like HomeAway and Airbnb, I think we need a more collaborative approach to understand where those Airbnbs are so that when I pick up the phone and call someone at the city to deal with the issues that are right next door to me, that there's someone to respond. Right now, there really is no enforcement capacity at the city. It's simply a piece of paper and a law. But if no enforcement is available, it doesn't mean much. And so I'd really like to work more collaboratively with the technology companies to put some teeth behind what's already been existing.
So is the problem that the law isn't strict enough, or is the problem that there's no enforcement? Could there be a looser law if the enforcement of those who violated the law was better?
So right now, for example, if I were to call the city and say there's an Airbnb operating illegally, there's no one to respond to that. I think what needs to happen is the city needs to know where all the Airbnb or HomeAways or other short-term rentals are in our community, and that means a closer working relationship with the technology companies. I think if you have that, there's the ability to have more enforcement, more regulation, and that gives you funding opportunities to enforce some of the rules that the city could place forward.
You know, another issue is transportation. Ward 1 is home to the medical district. The proposed light rail line would end up there. What are your thoughts on light rail?
So I sit on the RTC's Transportation Resource Advisory Committee, and with that committee we made a unanimous recommendation to support light rail going from the airport and ending or terminating in the medical district. The reason for that is because our community, as you probably know, is going to grow by another 500,000 people or so in the next 10 years. Whatever transportation challenges we have now are going to be exponentially, significantly more in 10 years. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as leaders in the community to identify mass transit options. Light rail, I think, is a good option to explore. I love the fact that it ends in the medical district because there's so much activity that's currently going on in the medical district. And when I knock on doors, people are asking about the traffic congestion that exists now. Mass transit is one option to to bring about greater options for people in our community.
So I want to ask you two things on that. The first is, if you're going to do mass transit, why aren't you doing it from the airport to the Strip?
From the information I've received from the RTC is that a large majority of the Strip operators don't necessarily want mass transit on the Strip. The Maryland corridor was picked because it serves locals. It hits the UNLV campus, it hits the Boulevard Mall campus, and then into the downtown community. Those are major population centers, and moving our locals to and from where they need to go, I think, is where RTC wants to spend most of their time focused on.
So the thing that just confused me about that plan is, I understand that people go to UNLV, they go to the airport, they go to the medical district, but it doesn't seem like they would go from UNLV to the medical district or from the airport to the Boulevard Mall. I mean, aren't people just going to drive to those places instead of driving to light rail and then taking light rail to where they need to end up?
So in my experience, so if you're a student at UNLV, you probably live somewhere around UNLV. If you need to get medical care, you're connecting the UNLV campus with the School of Medicine, the UNLV campus, right there on Charleston, and then you have downtown. So it's not only for getting to UNLV and Boulevard Mall, it's about giving people access to get food, giving people access to get to their place of employment, giving people access to enjoy downtown Las Vegas, and getting people access to medical care. A light rail line, or the equivalent of a light rail line, isn't just one singular way of transportation. It's the multiple bus routes that'll connect to it that go on arterials. It's not, transportation is complicated, and it's not going to be one single fix for our community. It's going to be a community-wide vision that might include a mass transit system with connecting bus lines. And you also have to include Uber and Lyft and the other taxi options that are available in our community currently.
Would you ever support tax increases to pay for light rail?
I think it depends on the community and how they feel about what's needed. When I knock on doors, I can tell you that traffic congestion comes up a lot.
I want to talk a little bit about your business, BP2 Solutions. You had a contract with the school district for about $17,000. Your rate in that contract was $200 an hour. I mean, what were you telling the school district that was worth $200 an hour?
So I'm glad you brought that up. I've done a lot of contracts. I've had 2 contracts with the school district, and I've worked for a variety of nonprofits in our community. The opportunity that I had with the school district, they set my price, and they've worked with me for probably 10 years now. I worked with a lot of our community leaders on facilitating discussions around how the school district can be more efficient. So a lot of the conversations that I led, a lot of the recommendations that I made led to cost savings for the school district. So the rate of pay is something that they set for me, and I was grateful to work for them. It was a really good experience because it gave me more opportunity to understand the Clark County School District, which I think is very beneficial for my role in the city of Las Vegas as an elected official.
On your website, you talk about public safety and how you want kids to be able to, play in front of their houses. Olivia Diaz, who's running to be your colleague from Ward 3, sat here a couple weeks ago and said, there needs to be a greater police presence in her ward to increase public safety. Is that something you see in Ward 3, or how do you increase public safety?
Yeah, in Ward 1, so our neighbors are talking about, we want officers to drive down residential streets as opposed to, say, driving down Charleston or Sahara. They want them to drive down a residential street so they see the police cars. They want the police officers to come to neighborhood meetings so they know the police officers that are patrolling. I think that's possible. I think in working with the Metropolitan Police Department, I've done several ride-alongs. I think that's something the officers want as well. I think we need to...
So what's holding it back? I mean, if the officers want it, if the people running for office want it, why isn't it happening?
In talking with the officers, they think that, well, let me start over. I've been on 3 ride-alongs now, one with the city marshals and 2 with the Metropolitan Police Department. And what they tell me when I'm riding along with them is that there's not enough officers on the streets. And I think that's the #1 issue and concern that we should be focused on.
We're going to have to leave it there. Brian, thanks so much for coming on.
I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching. Remember, if it involves Nevada politics, we're talking about it right here on Nevada Politics Today. I'll see you next week.